Hello, I am Chris Gazdick, a mental health and substance abuse therapist. You have landed on a podcast called Through a Therapist's Eyes. It's a different introduction, Neil. You like that?
It is different. I like it.
Got to switch it
nice
up.
change.
I have that book out, Still Rediscovering Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. Welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, where you get personal insights directly from a therapist in your own home or personal time in your car. And more of us nowadays are getting in our cars, right? Have you noticed that?
We're getting back into it, getting more traffic, and yeah.
I passed two or three traffic accidents when I was going home on Thursday.
People forgot how to drive.
I mean, I was like, what is going on out here? Holy cow. Y'all around the world, I'm sure you know how to drive better than us on I-85 here in the Charlotte area. Anyway, see the world through the lens of a therapist, but being aware this is not the delivery of therapy services in any way. Help us out by subscribing. Listen, we're not doing a Facebook Live today because this is like Sunday, so we're way out of our element.
Yeah, we are. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better now because you were off on Thursday.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I was going to push through and, do the show on Thursday, and I was kind of making excuses, telling Neil, you come in, we could do it. I kind of want to just go home. And you just cut in. Like, what did you say? You're like...
Tell me this weekend when you want to do it.
All right, that's it. I'm like, okay, good call, because, man, I went home and crashed. I'd had a cold, and so I'm still on the over end of a cold. And but we came in, we want to get a show out for you. We didn't want to skimp, frankly, because I feel good about doing this show. I really feel obviously passionate about it, and I want to call people in to join us on that. We're doing this on a Sunday night. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the 5-star. Make some comments on Apple iTunes. That's the way that you can really help us, and it helps a lot. So I want to challenge us to get like 10 this week. If you've already subscribed, or if you've already hit the stars, or you've already written something on Apple iTunes, get a friend to do it. So
right, and don't forget to follow on Spotify too, because that also helps us there. I know you can't review Spotify, but at least follow.
Why can't you review Spotify? Spotify people, come on.
I don't know why not, but
it's
just follow us. Get us in them top podcasts so more people hear and get exposed to it.
Because you do make us what we do, and we enjoy doing this show with you. Contact it through a therapist's eyes.com is where you can interact with us. You got to leave us an email for us to respond back, though. We've learned that. Listen, this is the human emotional experience. We endeavor to figure this thing out together. We haven't done a fun fact thing in a while. Neil, I think they need to learn you a little bit. So you're up, man. What's a fun fact about Mr. Neil Robinson? I set you up, man.
If you challenge me to something and I commit to it, I will do it. A few years ago, I did a lot of physical activities that I normally wouldn't do. And the guy at the gym always joked about it because I would never commit. But once I committed, I was there. So
stubborn.
I'll be reluctant to say yes, but once I say yes, I'll do it. So I've done a few things that between Spartan races and GoRucks that I normally wouldn't think I would, but you push through, you learn a lot about it, and even got my kids to do like the Spartan Kids that same year, and they had a blast. So with my oldest almost being old enough, we might run some Spartans over like next year or two, I'm hoping.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Hey, there's a Spartan race in December. I don't know if you can go cold. I'm sure you got to train a little bit for that stuff. But I have he's like, no.
No,
I have somebody, my wife's trainer, if you're listening out there. She wants to actually have somebody to run it with, and we thought of Craig, but we haven't really figured out, put two and two together with people. So if you want to run one in December, have somebody who needs a partner.
Probably not this December. So especially depending which one it is, too.
It's a month away, man. You'd be good to go.
No,
I challenge you.
I don't accept. I have to see. The key was I have to accept.
I get it. Yeah. So that's cool though about you. So you really kind of get into doing something if you put your mind to it and you accept the challenge and you'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I have to remember that. Inside scoop, behind the scenes, through a therapist's eyes. Neil, create 10,000 downloads tomorrow.
I'll get some bots on that.
Some bots. Okay, what are we doing today? So, yeah, like I said, I think this is the last day that I'm kind of recovering from this cold I've been having. That's why my voice sounds a little weird if I get into a little bit of a cough. That's what it is. Probably should have filled my drink up before we go, but we're powering through on a Sunday night. Shame sucks. What do you think about that title? I'm just curious.
I think it's something a lot of people are going to want to, it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be good. I can't wait to hear what you say about it, where we go through with it. And I really want to hear your insight to help people get through this, because I think shame is very hard for people to deal with. So,
Can't believe we haven't done a show on this yet.
for shame.
Yeah, for shame. He shames me. Nicely done. No, we haven't, and it is. I am glad to be doing this show because I agree with your sentiments there. I mean, it is. It's a topic that I think we all deal with, and I think it's a I think it's a weird topic, and I don't even really know how to put words on what I mean by that. But it's something that we all deal with on some level, and I feel like I'm pretty good at putting words on things, but I'm not really great at putting words on the depths of shame, how it operates in this type of thing. I mean, I could do it. I'm going to do it tonight. I've thought about it. But it's one of those things that I feel like is just, and I'm going to test you, I'm going to catch you cold with your thoughts, right? Like on what is shame. So you can think about it for a minute. Because I just, I feel like, shame-based behaviors is something I talk about all the time in therapy. But then that's easier to do, shame-based behaviors, what you do and what comes out of shame and, the feeling that you get and that type of thing. But when you just look at what is shame and how does shame operate, it's just a weird concept, I feel like. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's a concept. I mean, shame is they're so diverse for each person. Just kind of like happiness or joy, those are always, it's unique to the person. So it's hard to really encompass shame into one nice definition because everyone, deals with things differently. So you might feel shame about, I might not care.
So people feel or experience is a better word.
Mm-hmm.
People experience the concept of shame very differently.
Very much so.
I think that's a true statement, Neil. Yeah. I think you put a finger on it. I mean, there's a definition. We're going to go with a definition, right? We do definitions on the show. The definition comes from probably Google, Mr. Dr. Google. Why isn't ever Mrs. Google? Is it Mrs. Google or Mr. Google?
Well, Mrs. Google's make sure everything runs. Mr. Google just has time to look things up.
Right. That's perfect. All right. The definition: a feeling of embarrassment or humiliation that arises in relation to the perception of having done something dishonorable, immoral, or improper. And there you go, ergo, the experience, right? Of being shamed or shame. What is improper? What is immoral? What is dishonorable? That really is a broad stroke, but we all feel that way. And so therein lies, I think, some of the difficulty because human experiences with this is so varied.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to what you were saying.
Right. And I think the key to the definition was in relation to the perception. I think it's that perception, how people perceive it or receive certain things. And that's how shameful they are about it or not shameful. So it's
But boy, when it kicks in, it is a powerful, powerful force in our lives. I'll tell you that.
It is a huge factor in how we do or don't do things.
Right. We should be having this Facebook Live for the cameras. We have our next door neighbor, who shall remain unnameless, has a storage facility like on the other side of a wall. I never hear them unless they bang my wall in my therapy office, which does happen. Or this time, the most unique thing just happened. What did we just experience?
Sounds like someone dropped like a pipe.
Like right on our head. Ching. Oh, that was funny. That was classic. People have just hit the fast forward button. They're like, what the heck's going on? I don't know. Dude, it's Sunday night. I'm on the edge of a cold. I ain't right today, but we're powering through. Did I mention that?
We're trying to.
We're trying to. It is seriously a very, very powerful force. When you look at shame-based behaviors, we'll talk about that, like how this comes out. But man, when you get into the depths of feeling the full-on force of shame in your life, you can go into a very, very deep and dark hole with this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of shame when I'm thinking about drug and alcohol addictions, right? There's so much built up over a lifetime where people, they may be blacking out. They may not even know all of what they're doing. But through someone's career in drinking and drugging, man, the shame that they develop, consequently closely related to the fear that they have because of shame, that they may be found out for what they never want to portray but know really is there. dishonorable, immoral, despicable behavior in a lot of ways when you're in active addiction. I mean, when you have that kind of levels of shame built up, it is so, so powerful. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Put a totally different category when you have sexual shame built up because of sexual abuse or being, a victim in some way. You can live a lifetime of this just churning and churning. So this idea of shame just keeps on blowing up in somebody's head. Like, I'm trying to depict how powerful this is.
Well, I mean, even outside of the concept of addiction, like think about your children or you as a child. When you do something wrong, as your child gets a little bit older and they're on their own, and then they do something wrong, they don't want to reach out for help to the parents, and then that becomes a cycle where that avoidance adds up too. Where it's maybe not an addiction issue, but just the sheer fact of disappointment and shame with your parents or your friends.
Right.
And that's another cycle, because I'm a engulfment person, so I withdraw. And then when I withdraw, I get more shame for not dealing with it, and then I don't do it more, and then I get more.
It's a loop.
It's a cycle. And like I said, that's not even dealing with addiction. That's just the concept of shame and trying to deal with that idea of shame that I would go through.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just saying, addiction or abuse, domestic violence, there are different things that are chronic in our lives. But honestly, when you have something like being stood up in high school and never really deal with that feeling, that is a shame-based feeling that is looped just as well and sometimes plays throughout somebody's life.
Yeah, how many relationships does that affect later in their life?
And each one that you feel you've screwed up or whatever you've done wrong or, impacted negatively some way, it just adds and adds and adds. I feel like if we peeled the layers off of people, we would just see layer after layer after layer of shame. I mean, there's other good stuff in there too. We feel good about ourselves. We build confidence. We, like our attractiveness, whatever. So there's layers of good things, but layer after layer after layer after layer of the insecurity-based world that we all have internal. It's big, it's deep,
yeah,
it's depthy. So my take on it here is that shame actually is just a bit of a natural state in human relations. Interestingly, it puts a check on our mentality, right? So that basically human beings would not have survived and thrived if we didn't stick together. And I was just thinking about shame in this way, where it kind of keeps us a part of the herd. When you do things that isolate you and separate you or are divisive, people can get more and more divisive, but you get divisive in groups. And so a concept of shame keeps a group, sometimes groups pitted against each other, unfortunately. Just look at Democrats and Republicans in today's world in the States. But right, but you're in a group. Shame is a piece that kind of keeps that group together. And that's a whole different take, I feel like, on shame. Does that make sense?
Is that like misery loves company?
Kind of.
Like this group is miserable about something, this group's miserable about something, so they kind of find that they commiserate together.
I think so. Absolutely.
And that's why I think that goes back to the idea of like support groups. Your AAs and stuff. They're all kind of going through that same thing, so there's a relatability to it in their shame. And who do you want to help you out with your shame more than other people going through the same thing, relating through the same things? It adds a layer of comfort to the harshness of that emotion.
But here's an interesting thing, real and in the moment. That's why I love conversations about these things, right? What would be the antithesis of shame? Because in a support group, you're not, well, maybe you're bonding on shame a little bit just to keep the group dynamics to be reasonable, but you're coalescing around something else. I don't have the answer, but it occurs to me that there's an antithesis because we're building around what? Acceptance, compliments. What would be the antithesis?
I mean, I was thinking of acceptance because there's something about like with shame you kind of become isolated and separate. Acceptance is you're now, like I said, being accepted. It's more of a group thing. It's more welcoming. Shame is an isolation. Acceptance is more of a welcoming.
Acceptance is the antithesis of shame. Put that down for a takeaway that we created together. For real. I've never heard that before. And I like that concept. If you have a heavy shame-based feeling about yourself, find places that you can feel accepted and acceptable in relationships to other people. That's a powerful compliment to, not compliment, that's a powerful advocation for support groups and finding friendships and being in groups of people that are affirming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, boy, that's a pretty cool hot take. And I'm slow on the uptake today. I think we create. That's you, man. You did that. You don't know what to say, do you?
Yeah, it is what it is.
The cameras. That's classic. Okay, where are we? So moving on. Yeah, how does it operate? I do find articles on stuff that I looked at, and I kind of leaned a little bit on the article that I found at Very Well Mind this time. I'll differentiate when these lists or when these things I'm thinking about are from the Very Well Mind, and I did my own kind of as well. But there's this article was a really good article in our show notes. And I like verywellmind.com's stuff, honestly. They come up a lot, and I usually agree with most of their stuff. This was a long article on shame, and they had a lot of different aspects, of which I used a couple of them. This was one of them. So let's think about it. How do you know you have shame? How does shame operate? You might be listening to this show thinking, well, I don't feel very shameful. I don't really get a lot of that. I feel good about myself. I've worked hard on myself, and I've improved things, and I'm in a good space. But hold the phone, because this is a very, very common feeling. And I think these are cool ways to kind of figure out signs, if you will, that you have shame. So this is a long list. Look at this with me. Feeling sensitive, okay? Feeling unappreciated. Uncontrollable blushing when you have that experience. Feeling used, feeling rejected. Feeling like you have little impact. Being worried what others think about you. Let's just pause right there. I remember as a child, I actually went to a meeting. Won't disclose what meeting it was. And I just put out there, instead of just passing, I put out there, like, yeah, I wasn't sure what to say, and I was worried about what all y'all are thinking about me. And, so that's just something that I think about at school, and, what people are thinking about me, and it doesn't feel good. And, I just worry about that a lot. And I just passed it off. I was like 9 or 10 years old, Deep thinker, I guess I've been told. And I mean, the people that came up to me after the meeting and, talked to me about it, it was really cool, because like, oh my God, I feel that way too. I think that way too. And I'm like, oh my God, well, you're all grown up. So how am I doing the same thing you're doing? Well, guess what? Because there's shame that people feel, both young and old, middle-aged, teenage, doesn't matter, right? And these are different signs that say that that's the case. So worrying that you aren't treated with respect, feeling like others take advantage of you, wanting to have the last word, not sharing your thoughts or feelings because you're afraid or embarrassed, being afraid to look inappropriate or stupid. I mean, you don't have to say which one, but any one of these hit for you? Maybe all or several,
well, and
right?
I think that's the crazy thing about it, is you talked about maybe, you talk about people, I don't feel shame. I think everyone at some point in their life has gone through or are currently dealing with one or two, or like you said, many of those types of things. And you might be fine that 99% of the time you're fine, but you go to that one person and they affect you. You're shameful with that one person or that group of people or in that situation. So no matter how well adjusted you are, how
right.
positive you are, how optimistic you are, everyone's going to have something that has a deep-rooted shame.
And I'm going to create a title. I don't know if somebody else is taking this or not, but it creates shame attacks. Okay? Shame attacks to me are experiences where your emotions with shame overtake you in the moment. And they're causing some of these manifestations that we're listing here. Well, that Very Well Mine is listed. Shame attacks suck. Should we call that the title?
Yeah, shame attacks are horrible. I've dealt with
They're
a lot
scary.
of people that you can see the physical reaction, you can see the verbal reaction back at you. There's been people I've talked to and they get mad at me, and I'm like, part of it's an insecurity. Whatever I said to you, whether my intention was or not, the way you took it
Right.
It was not the way that was not my way that I said it. And so,
or intended it.
right. So, and it's like, okay, so is it me because of the way I said it, or was it you because of the way you took it?
Right. And it's probably an element of both.
Probably a little bit. And I could trigger them.
Yeah.
I could be the trigger.
Yep. And I get triggered oftentimes as much as triggering other people. I mean, this stuff, we throw our shame attacks around at people back and forth, don't we?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's what you just described. Let me just throw a big old shame ball at you, and you're pinned up against the wall, and you're just going to throw a shame attack back at me. So we can feel shame attacks or deliver shame attacks. Oh, and it's a horrible world when you're in that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Terrible, terrible world. So moving on with how this manifests, being more worried about failure than doing something immoral, being a perfectionist. All you perfectionists out there, those are shame orientators. Feeling like an outsider or that you're different or left out. Feeling suspicious or like you just can't trust others. Trust challenges has something to do with shame, eh? Yeah. Right? Not wanting to be the center of attention, being a wallflower or a shrinking violet. What is a shrinking violet? I don't even know what that is.
That's a new wallflower. I've heard. Shrinking violet. I have not.
I got nothing there. Who wrote this article anyway?
I don't know, but now I want to look that one up. I'll want to look that one up.
Not wanting to be the center of attention, being a wallflower, wanting to shut people out or withdraw, feeling that you can't be your true self, trying to hide yourself or be inconspicuous. I like that word, inconspicuous. Losing your identity, feeling inadequate. I mean, how often do we feel inadequate? See, this happens all the time. I feel like we are constantly battling shame states in our life. And sometimes the shame states progress to shame attacks. Feelings of regret and feeling dishonorable. Finally, the behaviors below are examples of things that people do when they feel shame. Am I moving too fast on that? Causes of shame? Yeah. No. So this is some of the behaviors that come. So I talk about shame-based behaviors all the time. Looking down instead of looking people in the eye. Keeping your head hung low. Slumping your shoulders instead of standing up straight. Feeling frozen or unable to move. Not being able to act spontaneously. Stuttering when you try to speak. Talking in an overtly soft voice. Hiding yourself from others. Crying if you feel shame or embarrassment. These are strong shame attacks, I would submit. Mm-hmm. I have a funny story when I was doing show prep with this. Because I went through a very tough time in my life. I've shared before when I went through a divorce. It was a tough time. I questioned a lot. I didn't really think about it in way of shame-based feelings, but I guess it's exactly what it was. Because I didn't really feel like, you tell the kids, oh, it's not your fault. I never really felt like it was my fault. It was clearly my parents were the ones yelling, like I didn't do that. But something was off for a period of my life until I recovered and got through some stuff with that. I've never even thanked my mom. I think I've always intended to have the conversation with her. Anyway, we were walking down a road just in downtown Wheeling, West Virginia. That's where I'm from. Get the Wheeling feeling. Wheeling, West Virginia. And I just had my head straight down. I mean, I'm literally looking at the sidewalk as I'm just walking down the street. I don't know. We were going to a store or going to my grandma's house or something. I have no idea. But my head was just down, staring at the pavement as I'm walking down the road with my mom. And it must have been a pitiful sight. You know what this wonderful woman, my mother, did?
What?
She looked at me. She said, Chris, did you notice that girl back there? I'm like, no, what? What girl? Oh, she was hitting on you. She was smiling at you. You didn't see her? She hooked me, man. She hooked me. My head perked up, and I was like, oh, where, what? No, I didn't see that. No. And then my head was picked up, and I walked down the road with her. What an awesome display of a caring parent picking up, though, what's going on with their kid and creating a different moment, launching me in that moment out of shame and into an instantly different place. Like she was really successful at that moment. It's weird, isn't it?
It is.
Did I really just tell that story on a national, international podcast?
Did
I do that?
That's a great thing for other parents to see because
wow,
that's such a relatable story for so many parents because they deal with that so much. Like my two kids, when they get embarrassed or ashamed or whatever, they react completely different. it's funny. It's like last night, we told Luke he couldn't watch YouTube.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah, he got this, like, whatever. So Mason was doing something, our oldest, and we started picking on Mason. So Luke kind of is laughing. Alicia looks over, and Luke catches her seeing him. He goes from a smile to his back to a sullen, like,
yes.
But that's that thing that when our kids get upset, I think as a parent, you want to nurture, you want to get them out of that shame attack. You want to get them out of that shame.
Right.
And I think that's a great relationship, whether it's parent, child, or even your friends. When your friends see you and get in those shame moments, I think that's why it's important to have other people to help you move or redirect out of those shame attacks.
Again, acceptance, compliment, right? These are powerful antidotes to shame attacks and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that, if we focused on a little bit and guided people in our lives as much as we can. Now, by the way, my mom had an awesome moment there in success, but there's an internal experience, and sometimes we're very powerless and helpless. If your wife is having shame attacks, you can't take them away from her. If your husband's having, shame states and shame-based behavior, you can't take that away from him. You can try, you can give compliments, and you can be a part of a solution. But this is all very much an inside job too.
Yeah.
Okay. My mom never listens to this show, but Mom, thank you for that moment. I can never be told that I didn't thank her for that. Now I have officially come full circle. How about that? Okay, let's move on to what causes this stuff. Shame on you. You did me shame just a little bit ago, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Shame that I haven't done this shame show. Oh, I'll go in my shame corner now. I think I just want to try to do comedy. How am I doing?
It's okay tonight.
Stay with my day job.
Day job. Yeah.
Okay, I'll stick with therapy. Shame on you, though. That is a phrase we say, right? You ever hear that expression? We definitely do throw shame attacks. We shame others, and you can ask yourself, is this a productive thing to let somebody know something, or have we just crossed the line and gotten too judgmental, right? So, interestingly enough now, let's not totally demonize shame. Given what I was saying before about it, this is a human interaction tool. Okay, we talk about iron sharpens iron. You ever heard that expression?
Yeah, of course.
True friends tell you what you need to hear. Okay, there are things that we do when we're in groups of people where somebody does something the group doesn't accept, and we let them know, like, hey, you need to get back in line. Like, we don't do that. Therapists have ethics, and when somebody breaks ethics, we kind of say, look, that's not cool. You can't just break confidentiality. That's not a part of. You can't be a part of our group. As a matter of fact, we have laws, we have rules, we have guidelines. We have homeowners associations. Have you ever been shamed by the HOA grass police people?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Regularly, right?
I do not do yard work consistently.
Sorry, did I just throw a shame bomb?
No, I don't care.
But they do. They get you in line, and that's for home value reasons. I think some of those things are stupid. I actually got a shame attack from a homeowners association recently for mold on the house, like it needed cleaned or something.
Yeah, you have to pressure wash them. You have to make, if your shutters fade, you have to get them painted. It's to help.
Whatever.
Yeah, we've seen some arguments in ours about some guy who has a nice huge trailer in the front that he uses to haul stuff.
Oh dear God!
And they're like, oh, why is this person's thing there? It's like there's this balance. Like I feel like with all that stuff, there's a balance. But I think you kind of hit on the head that to me, shame is a very powerful tool for correction, because shame is a powerful motivator to not do something again.
Right.
But I think you have, like you said in the statement, you have to balance that line between doing it for their benefit and then doing it because you just want to be judgmental.
Well,
to
their
make you feel
benefit
better.
or our benefit,
Right?
As a group, yeah. Judgmental is terrible, but you know what? We do use judgment all the time. I get hot and bothered when people talk about being too judgy and whatever. You know what? If I give you a compliment, guess what I just got? Judgmental about your really awesome looking hair tonight. Yeah. You do have cool looking hair.
I need a haircut.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, I
but
think I like you with
I
longer
probably
hair.
won't get it cut for a while. I don't get my hair cut very often. So
I maximize my haircuts too. But that's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
That's using judgment. And you're exercising your judgmentalness to give a compliment as much as giving a criticism. For the benefit of the group, shame doesn't need to be banned from our human relationships because then we wouldn't have groups.
You
we
also
wouldn't-
wouldn't know how to improve or make yourself better.
Right. We wouldn't have a herd. We wouldn't have a group mentality. We wouldn't have organizations. We wouldn't have growth and improvement. You're right. But we can't go too far because it'll get judgmental. So that's some of what causes shame, though. It comes from a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Weird, I know. Lots of types of shame can be identified, which to me represents the sources. That was one thing about the article I thought was weird. They had 4 categories of shame and types of shame, and I was like, I mean, they had a long list of types of shame: chronic shame, shame in the form of humiliation, shame about strangers, and shame in front of others. I thought it was interesting. All those lists to me, I was like, I don't know. To me, that just lists different sources. Like it does come from different places and different concepts, and that's pretty well varied. Maybe that's why Very Well Mind had a long article. But there are types. Here's something that, and this is, by the way, this causes of shame. This is my own list. This is where I was really thoughtful about. The third that I came up with. So shame on you is definitely shame that we talked about first there to help groups. The second is just types of shame. It represents maybe the sources of shame. But this third one I thought was really important: a heavy critical figure in your life. Dramatic pause, right? Like, that can create very bad forms of shame. Okay. Heavily internalized shame. Okay. That creates a spin-off of other feelings: insecurities, fear, anger, irritability, doubt, distrust. A lot of the shame-based outcomes that we mentioned before. A very critical person in your life creates very bad forms of shame, and that is an internalized shame-based feelings, such as we talked about core beliefs. If you didn't hear that show, Courtney and I talking about core beliefs 2 or 3 ago, very, very good show. It's one of the best that we've done, I think. Very, very prominent thing in our life, challenge the life assumptions we live by. Well, this is one of those things. I'm not good enough. Doesn't it sound like one of those core beliefs we talked about? Well, that is a shame-based feeling that's chronic in nature. And I think when you have a very critical person in your life, man, it can be just rough.
Well, the one thing that stands out to me, and I've kind of thought about it with this, is human nature, your positive interactions, your negative interactions. It's been proven with many studies that you can have 10 or 20, I don't know what the number is, but you can have 10 or 20 positive interactions. You can do something great 20 times. As soon as you get one negative, it completely wipes out those 20. So imagine now having 10 negatives
right,
and 5 positives, and what is that going to do to your psyche when what you're receiving is most negative, which is more impactful to your psyche, to your core beliefs, to yourself. And so that's the part where you talk about if they're always heavily critical and you're not getting that positive reinforcement to go with it in some source, especially if it's not from them.
That's brutal outcomes.
It's going to kill those, your
crushes your spirit.
Yeah, definitely.
Crushes your spirit for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to recover. And I've seen that a lot in my therapy office. When you have those figures, it's something hard to overcome when you have that. Again, especially when it's internalized. And sometimes you don't even know it's there. Like when I was a kid, clearly feeling shame-based feelings there. I didn't know that it was strong on me at that time. I didn't even know that it was there. But my mom identified it. So, fourth, having been burned in life. Again, this can trigger the internalization of shame, which is really where shame gets dangerous when it really gets internalized. How's that for a takeaway? Like, bad forms of shame is when it gets internalized and just spun around into a circle. So when you get burned, that's gonna create a lot of woo-woo weird feelings in your head. Like, what did I do wrong? Again, what's the definition, right? Did I do something immoral? Did I do something dishonorable? Did I do something improper? Like, something's wrong? Why did I just get, burned? Why did they just crash me? Well, it makes you doubt. It makes you fear those realities. Here's another one, though, too. 5, acting badly. Doesn't this cause shame when you act badly? And that goes back to like the positive aspect of shame, how it keeps us together. Well, when you do something really crappy, if you're mean to me and you feel bad about it or immoral, like you said, that's going to prevent you from doing it again, right?
Yeah.
So don't act badly. But that is a form of or a source of shame. Yeah, that's where I said addiction creates an incredible amounts of this. Underperforming in events or with your interpretation of your production. Maybe setting goals too high, like an OCD circumstance, or if you have anxiety conditions, can you see where that would just, I'm constantly not measuring up. I'm constantly not perfect. All of us perfectionists out there. Dang, you're just shaming yourself into a hole. Creating shame attack after shame attack. Trying to be the best parent out there. I looked at the camera because I know you're all trying to be the best parent ever. I know I did. My brother even accused me of that. Trying to be the parent of the year, Chris. I'm like, well, it's not a bad goal.
Sounds like he might have some shame on his side, but that's a whole other thing.
Could be. He'll be in town. I'll introduce you to him. You tell him that.
I don't think I can. I don't think I have enough. I don't think I know him well enough yet.
Yeah, we'll have him back down next year. Anyway, mental health conditions is what I just had mentioned. I don't think people think about this very much, but what were we doing? I don't know. A recent show we were doing about that. Maybe it was core life assumptions. Anyway, I talked about it a few shows ago where when you have a mental health condition like bipolar or depression or anxiety, any of the forms, like that drives your brain to think in a certain way. You know, that drives your behavior to operate in a certain way. And that's going to, unfortunately, trap you into a position where some of the shame does get created. Okay? So domestic violence, including bullying, rejection, high focus on your own flaws or imperfections, those are all some of the things that, you know, create different forms of shame. I'm going to do this interesting fact, and I think I need to get myself something to drink, so we're going to push a pause here in a minute, and it's going to feel like no time for you, but for us, it's going to be like 5 minutes. I'm going to get a drink, so just get ready because I know you got to push the weird buttons there. This is an interesting fact, though, that I came across. Okay, from the article, this is in the no, this is from a different article, right? This actually, when I was doing show prep, I was thinking about that. The aspects of shame and the herd mentality that we talked about.
Right.
Well, this gave support to the idea that I was kind of flirting around there, and I thought this was really fascinating. So I can't do it right justice unless I just kind of read it. So they were talking about, though, how the important to note about an experiment they did with infants, and they highlighted how shame naturally, without even learning how to do this, just naturally is there. So it's important to note that infants experience shame naturally without ever learning. Okay, so this is this. So we didn't know it until fairly recently, and I thought that was interesting too, recently, because I hadn't heard this before either. So somebody must have stumbled upon, you know, this study or this event and, you know, kind of documented it. So what happened is, let me see. Infants are born hardwired with the ability to experience shame. So here's an example of a scene that shows an infant's response to feeling shame. So this baby is sitting on the kitchen counter in his infant seat. Mom steps out of the room for a moment, and then mom starts walking back into the room. The baby hears mom's steps and anticipates making joyful eye contact with her when she gets back. And the photo accompanying this post shows a baby's state of positive interest, okay? But this time, mom is preoccupied, and when she comes back into the room, she doesn't meet the baby's eyes. The muscles in his neck then lose their strength, and the head drops down. He turns his face away from her. His eyes are cast downward, and he may even drool. This is shame/humiliation. Mom did not meet his high interest. She did not make the connection. The baby's shame is the result. I just thought that was really a pretty cool depiction, right? Like, of how we experience this just automatically. Something like mad, happy, glad, sad. Those are the primary emotions we have. Shame's almost one of those, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to survival. Shame is a powerful mitigator for a lot of stuff, and so that's one of those. I think that's one of those survival instincts you get, like the fight or flight kind of mentality. And so I could see that being hardwired, and I think that's where, as if you grow up in an encouraging house, you see some kids that are more, almost naive or just jovial or just more excitable, where another household they're more stoic or sad generally because they've been conditioned to not enjoy or not be excited, or they
guarded.
You're right. Parents don't encourage that childlike mentality, so they get shamed for acting that way, and now they become try to be more mature or try to do this. And so I think that really goes into how a parent treats those moments when the kid is excited. Do the parents get excited and give them acceptance for their behavior, or do they ignore them and they the kid feels shameful because, oh, my parent didn't accept it? Because at that age, who are you looking for acceptance from? Your parents.
Now, let's be careful as well, though, because, I mean, look, you can't be perfect out there. You're going to feel that disappointment. You're going to feel that humiliation, and you do have to learn how to cope with it. Because moms don't think that, and dads too, that you got to constantly meet the child's gaze or meet the child's expectation, right? Because that's impossible. There's a learning process that goes on for that baby as well. Yeah. My mommy didn't look at me, and I'm disappointed, so I feel sad, but I can cope with that feeling, and then the next time I may or may not get that look and that connection, and it's okay. So we don't need to go overboard trying to do impossible things. I mean, there's a natural involved internal process that goes on.
The child should be growing out of certain things, and they should move on. And I think you hit on the head. You have to learn how to cope and deal with your own shame. That's a huge thing. If you can't deal with it, if you don't have those little bit of hardships younger, it's going to be so much harder to deal with it when you're older. And I think that's very important. That's very important. And I think that's great that you say that shame is okay to deal with. You just have to deal with it. When you have it, deal with it and figure out what works for you.
Right. All right, we're going to go on into how we feel our own shame and then how to combat this issue. I'm going to push pause, and we'll be right back in like nanoseconds. So we're moving on to another segment here of how do we feel our own shame. These are our shame-based behaviors. And interestingly, the Very Well Mind article that I was mentioning has another long list of shame-based behaviors. I just really want to speak up this article. If you like this topic, it'd be a good read for you to have that we have in our show notes. Again, shame can create a sense of being humble. We didn't talk about that before. Let's park out there a minute. Shame-based behaviors can also, again, we don't want to totally demonize this. We've talked about how it keeps us together and controls behavior appropriately a little bit. Can we not also say, it occurred to me, I think this was my own thought, that being humble comes from having a sense of shame.
I would agree with that.
Right?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Knowing your limitations, understanding your faults, understanding your imperfections, and these things about you creates a sense of humbleness. Well, you can't really come to that if you don't have a sense of shame about your thinking patterns, your behavior, your actions, your patterns. And that creates a sense of being humble. So again, this is not all bad. There is a lot of a learning process that goes into understanding the shame that's in you and how it operates. It creates humble. Also internalized feelings, and this can lead to bad cycles. So this was my big thing. And then I'll go to the Very Well Mind list. Bad cycles. You were talking about this before, but look at this. You feel shame. You act in ways that concern you about yourself. Thus, you create more shame. And therein goes this nasty, nasty loop over and over again. Layers of acting out badly, feeling bad about what you said, feeling more shame, acting in different ways that are badly, maybe trying to compensate, and creates more shame. Therefore, you do the same thing over and over again. You can get into a nasty loop.
I haven't
with that.
I haven't called my mom back. No other reason besides the fact that started out I was busy and forgot, and now I feel so bad that I didn't call her back that I don't want to call her because, I get the text. Are you mad at me? No, I'm kind of mad at myself, and I just don't think, like, I got a text from her yesterday. Hey, how's everything going? I'm like, I need to respond to her. Oh, I'll do it later. Oh, crap, forgot. Oh, no.
Right.
And my wife said, that's a guy thing. Maybe it is.
I think that's a people thing.
Yeah, I think it's a people thing because my wife is more that will just deal with it, and I'm, once again, abandonment engulfment.
Okay, so, right. Spin it inside, internalize. Yeah, maybe so.
So that's me. That's my worst shame habit.
It's interesting, and thank you for sharing that. That's cool because it's a simple one, but it is a shame loop, and your mom probably didn't even have any idea that happened.
Exactly.
She doesn't. She's none wiser to it. But yet you've put yourself through this whole circular thing, feeling worse about what you've done and getting even more and more stuck. And I think people do that all the time. It's a bad idea. Don't do that, people. But we're just trying to make, a step out of that. So call your mother. Call your mom.
I will.
You will right after this show. Okay, so their list is cool. I'm just going to go down through it and see what it does in our heads, Neil. The impact of shame. And then we're going to go and really talk a little bit about how do we combat that sense of shame. Makes you feel like you're flawed. There is something wrong with me. It can lead to social withdrawal. It can lead to addictions. Now, pause there. I disagree with the good people that very well mind. I hate the way, and I think I want to use that word hate. I am super highly concerned, if not hate, the way that we use the word addiction in our society. Can I say that out loud? Right?
You can.
Shame and this loop that you get into and major shame attacks, people, it does not lead to addictions. It doesn't. Now, it can lead to using substances destructively and therefore abusing alcohol and drugs and whatever else. Oh, yeah, sure. But drug and alcohol addiction, alcoholism, like, why do people perpetually put this out there that way? It drives me nuts, man.
I think you hit on that because it'll lead you to trying something or doing something, but whether you get addicted to it or you have an addiction to it,
right?
That's completely separate because
totally different issue.
It goes back to even if you look at the difference between drugs, alcohol, sex, video games,
right,
social media. Each one of those, everybody's different. Like, I can go have a beer and it doesn't bother me. Someone else has one and they end up staying all night at the bar drinking until they drink, whatever.
Right.
I get hooked on my video games or whatever, when someone else can be like, I just don't care. Just here.
Alcohol, drug addictions, online video gaming, sex addictions, eating addictions, and gambling or debting addictions. Those are the things we get addicted to. About 10 to 15% of our population do. 90 to 85% of us just are not going to be addicted. Even if we have massive shame bombs, we don't have addiction. I wish that we could kind of clear that word up and stop using addiction for stuff like this. It's a pet peeve of mine. Shall I move on?
No, I think you hit on the head, though. I think you have to understand that the shame can lead you to doing things that might trigger an addiction because you find out, oh, this gave me joy because I'm trying to deal with my shame, but it doesn't mean that the shame actually causes the addiction.
Right. Yeah. So these are, again, shame-based behaviors. Addiction is not a behavior, but moving on. Maybe because you become defensive and shame others in return, may lead you to bullying others if you've been bullied yourself, may cause you to inflate your ego, to hide the belief that you don't have value, narcissistic personality traits, may lead to physical health problems, can lead to depression and sadness, may leave you feeling empty, lonely, or worn out, may lead to lowered self-esteem, may lead to harder for you to trust other people, may make it harder for you to be in therapy or stop feeling as though you're being judged, may lead to perfectionism or overachievement and try to counteract your feelings of shame, may cause you to engage in people pleasing. How many people are people pleasers, right? May cause you to avoid taking because you're afraid to say the wrong thing. talking. I said taking. May cause you to avoid talking because you're afraid to say the wrong thing. May cause compulsive or excess behaviors like strict dieting, overworking, excessive cleaning, or having too high of standards in general, right? Like these are, and we could probably add on and make even a longer list of shame-based behaviors, but there's a lot of things there that I feel like as I went through that, I mean, do you not hear some of yourself in multiple of those lists in how this operates? I hope you do because you're human, and I do because I'm human. These are regular, daily almost experiences. You see what I'm saying of how chronic shame can be?
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking about some of those that, kind of goes back to the number one fear outside of death is public speaking. You talk about not talking in front of people or saying the wrong things, and it's that shame that, and I think that's what makes it so challenging is there's that shame of doing something wrong, and it's so ingrained in a lot of people, and so it's kind of interesting when you read that list, like you said, how many of those have I experienced at some point or another? It might not matter to me now, but I guarantee a lot of those I've felt in the past, and I've had to learn how to deal with it.
And that's something that we want to try to capitalize on, right? Like, learn how to deal with them. We're not going to prevent shame. We don't want to prevent shame. It's kind of like anxiety. Crazy statement, right? We don't want to prevent anxiety. If you have anxiety, a life without anxiety would be like weird.
It's survival.
It's right. Same thing with shame. You've got to pay attention to the way that we feel. We don't want to get rid of it, but you've got to learn how to overcome these things. You're going to learn how to manage them. And now everybody that's a mature adult out there saying you got this licked, come on, you're always growing. And shame finds another different way to slip into your head or into your experience that you have to re-examine and rework. I mean, it's a journey, right? It's constantly a journey, as they say. So how do we combat shame? In short, a lot of the emotion management tools we've discussed on multiple episodes, because after all, shame is an emotion and often very active. So I guess mic drop, should we just go there?
Yeah, exactly. and I think that's a key is that you learn how to control your emotions as you deal with different triggers of your shame. You should be able to figure out how to adapt and learn. And I think that's the key is when you figure out what is causing those triggers or your emotion, once you know that, you're better suited to handle other episodes of shame or other things. And I think you have to figure that out first. And then you can just use that across many different platforms of shame.
Definitely can be generalized to other areas and aspects of your life. Yeah, seriously, like you're managing emotion when you're dealing with this, because I think that's another reason why shame is so hard to kind of put words in and around, because can we say that it mixes with other things a lot? I mean, shame and guilt, insecurities, fear,
your
anxieties.
List. How many things in that list that you had, and each one, like you said, it's a little bit different. Here's an insecurity. Here's a guilt thing. Like you said, it is so ingrained. It's like one piece. It's like the foundation of all these different emotions,
right?
Or experiences, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. So in my list of thinking through this, right, let's see. Do an honest evaluation of self and behavior. Get out of your feels. Is that the new phrase? Everyone talks about the feels. Oh, you're in your feels or you're in your head. You ever hear that?
No.
You have not?
I've not heard your feels. That is a new one to me.
Oh, wow. I'm starting to hear that like all over the place. Now you'll start hearing it, though, I bet. Yeah, people are starting to say that a lot. Get out of your feels. That's a thing.
I hope I don't. I don't. That's a weird phrase to me.
I kind of like the way it sounds. Get out of your feels. But do an honest evaluation of yourself and your behavior. In AA, they do a what's it called? A fearless moral inventory. You just look at all the things that make me me. What are my behaviors? What are my actions? What are my tendencies? Let's just evaluate that. Some people really just try not to think about those things.
Yeah.
Right? I don't really understand that. I think it might be an engulfment abandonment thing, honestly, a little bit.
It could be. I think so. My wife, when she teaches kids about art, one of the things she wants to start striving is how to give and receive critiques for art, because that is a very interesting thing, because there's two sides of that. Is one, how do you receive it? How do you take those things where it's just a matter of fact, oh, I don't like that color, or I think this layout's different, or I don't agree with that. Or the other side of is how do you critique other people's art without going cross over that line? And so I think that's, the idea of receiving criticisms. That's that same thing as when someone says, hey, that you did this wrong, or you shouldn't, or even if they say you should do it this way, or I think they don't say should, right? You could do it this way.
Yes.
Right. You could do it this way. That they're trying to give you a benefit, but then if you don't know how to receive it, you're going to feel shame, and then
you can feel an attack.
Right. And so that receiving criticism, whether it's from yourself or from other people, is huge, because that's how you can know whether you want to change or not, or whether you care enough about it or not.
Yeah. Or if you pay attention, you got to develop some thick skin. I mean, I found that out as an author. People give a lot of compliments and a lot of praise and stuff, but you're not a successful author if you don't have somebody tell you it was crap. And, that happened very early on for me. I don't know what that means, but you're just going to get that. And you have to kind of, learn. Courtney was talking about criticism, though, critique. I forget what she said. I feel like she uses a different word. Do you remember that when she was talking about that? Author and writing activities, and she actually coaches authors, and I feel like she used a different word.
She might have. I don't remember, because she talked about that because she went through that with her stuff.
Yeah.
The shame she probably felt when her teacher told her that you're never going to be a good writer.
Right. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe when she told that story. I was like, you got to be kidding me. That teacher did not know what they were talking about. Anyway, okay. Oh, yeah, that's second on my list. Receive criticisms, however. Evaluate if they even accurately apply, right? So this is a way to manage shame. You might receive criticisms and they don't apply. We were just talking about that. That was second on my list. Be better to yourself. Accept self, including your flaws. And so many ways to be good to yourself. I wrote in quote, right, this crazy therapy thing. Write a love letter to yourself. Hey, it's really important to take care of yourself. I mean, listen, nobody in the world is here on the earth, except your parents when you're a minor, has a purpose to take care of you. They just don't. And even when you're a minor, your parents, more appropriately, are teaching you life lessons all the way along your minor life to be able to do on your own. So this is why we have the order of priority. If God's in the picture of religion, God is at the top of the list, fine. If not, then yourself is top. Yourself is the highest priority, because nobody has you as their priority higher than themselves. That's why God, by the way, our creator, being at the top of the list is safe and good, because there's a giving to you. But self, spouse, kids, family, friends, work at the bottom, because you have got to take care of yourself. You've got to facilitate your emotional self. You've got to compliment yourself. You've got to give yourself a break. I have a good moment I can share. I practiced what I preached Friday. Yeah, Thursday we were supposed to record. Right. Thank you, Neil, for kicking my ass home. Go home, Chris, is basically what you said. And I needed to be told that. And I did. And I stayed home all day Friday. Right?
Good.
And I needed to. We were able to do this teletherapy thing. That was really pretty cool. But I gave myself that, and I needed it. Consequently, I'm still feeling crappy a little bit of it. So there's nobody that's going to have a higher priority than you to take care of your own emotional self. So really, this probably should have been first on my list, to be good to yourself. That has got to be a priority. You're not good for anybody else if you're not good for yourself.
Put the mask on yourself before you put it on your kids.
That's what they say, not as a metaphor, but in order to survive in an airplane when the oxygen masks come down. Put it on your kid first, they'll die, and then you'll die. It's terrible. Well, actually, you'll die first, and then they'll die. That's morbid.
Good twist there. Good turn.
Resolve trauma. Number 4 often includes realization it was not your fault, right? Domestic violence, it's not your fault. This is his behavior, his responsibility. Or if you're the male victim of domestic violence, this is her bad behavior. This is her responsibility. It's not yours.
I think that's what I wanted to kind of think about too, because you've mentioned a lot about the stuff you deal with. A lot of the trauma or the backlash that you receive is because of shame that person's feeling. And I think that's
Say that again. What?
a lot of like when you talk about like bullying or you talk about receiving
Oh, yeah.
judgmental criticism,
Right.
it's not a lot of times it's not about you. It's about something that they've gone through and they haven't resolved.
Totally.
It's their shames that they're basically exuding out onto you and talking about they haven't addressed their problems, so now you're getting the emotional vomit.
Now, I'm sure that us sophisticated adults are all saying, oh, I don't worry about bullying anymore. I'm grown. I am all mature, and I know these things. Oh, wait a minute. When you go into your job interview, how are you feeling there? And somebody's mean to you in a job interview or all these lovely job performance evaluations, people shaking their boots a lot of times when that happens. Well, maybe that's your supervisor's issues. You ever think about that?
Oh yeah.
Miss Sophisticated Young Lady or Mr. Bad Boy, don't nobody bother me.
Which makes you really wonder how ingrained that really is if it's just a show. You know,
Absolutely.
it's that mask you put on to deal. That's how they're thinking they're dealing with their shame or they're dealing with their insecurities when they're really they have a lot of stuff. They might go home and you said they're shaking in their boots. They can't sleep the night before. They
Yes.
can't eat. There's a lot of stuff going on, and that's natural when you're at a high risk something that you think is important. You're going to put a lot more stress on you, and that's how that shame can really add to it, because the fact that if it's important to you, it's going to weigh more heavily on the way it affects your body.
Back to our definition, right? Have you done something dishonorable? Maybe. Have you done something immoral? Have you done something improper? Well, I want to be totally proper here or I won't get the job. You know, yeah, it's a lot of pressure, and it's shame-based feelings. So resolve trauma. It's not your fault. A lot of times it's the other person's reality. I thought this was a cool thing in combating shame. Focus on boundaries. Kind of spins off together there, number 4 and 5. When you're dealing with other people's emotion, other people's unresolved issues, and it bleeds off onto you, boundary setting becomes really important. And when you get good at setting appropriate and consistent, strong boundaries, then man, you can have some space to heal and to be inoculated. That's what thick skin kind of starts to become about. That might be the definition of have thick skin. We should do a program on that. Develop thick skin. That'd be a nice title. Sorry, I know I do random thoughts.
What do we just call it? Resiliency?
Yeah,
I know
that's so clinical.
I know you love that term. Right?
No, that's
right?
Casey's term. Casey
Okay.
loves that term. Oh, she's probably listening. She's going to love that moment. Avoid being alone with the feeling. How about that for combating shame? Y'all need to really understand. I know it takes a lot to be vulnerable. I know that it's hard to develop a safe confidant. You think your spouse is the safest person in your life. Man, that could be hard to go to a spouse. It's not easy because you got a lot of skin in the game. But you got to find safe confidants and ask them about these internal thoughts so they're not internal anymore. And oftentimes this is why therapy can be good, by the way. Go find a therapist because it's an, artificially safe environment because of the non-judgmental ethical stuff it's partly why it works. It's hard to do that outside of a professional relationship. But dude and dudette, like people, please, like you cannot stay alone with these feelings when they're chronic. It's a bad idea. It's not likely to change. It will stay ingrained.
It doesn't just naturally fix itself.
No. No. You've got to get out of your head and into the thoughts with somebody else to check them out. You ever had a conversation like that? Because I do this. All right, I'll go to a friend or somebody and I'll say, man, I was thinking about this and this happened and this is what I was going on. I don't know is that bad of me to think about that? That's ridiculous, right? What should I be doing? Do you check things out, check things in with people?
Yeah, I think there's certain things that you kind of question, like, yeah, am I rational in my thought process?
Right.
Did I make the right decision based on that? And yeah, I think and you always have, I think you have that one or two people. I think my wife is one that I feel very confident, but I have a buddy or two that, we actually can talk about those things, and we both have been vulnerable, and it's, we can commiserate, our marriages, and we can also celebrate our marriages and all the other stuff. So
it is stupid important to have those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're feeling like you really don't have those relationships, get one. Just one.
Yeah, all you need is one. You just need someone to bounce ideas off. Someone to bounce off. Am I crazy? You know?
Well, you need. No, not the more the better. I would say ideally a few. We're talking about the intimately close, good, best friend type relationship.
I think if you can get like 2 or 3, because, and I think you almost want a little bit of a different variety.
Yeah.
Because you get different insights. You're not just, they all think the same like me. You want that validation from more than one source.
So in this segment on how do we combat shame, episode 163, I wrote it down as I was brainstorming this. I thought about that. Challenge your automatic thoughts. It was a really, really good show, episode 163. And honestly, that whole show, probably, like in hindsight, we didn't talk about shame there at all. But it probably is an underpinning of that whole conversation. And that was one of the best shows we've done. I feel like I've said that a few times to people. Because it's so in touch with this segment on how do you combat shame. So check out 163, y'all. It is a good one, and it'll help you. I think it'll help you a lot. Focus on life compliments from many people, right? That be good to yourself, and be good to yourself also means like allow other people's compliments to actually fit. If I say you have a nice haircut, why would you say, "Oh, it's terrible. I cut it too long, and I don't really like the stringiness of it. It's too oily." And it's
I thought the same thing after I said it. I'm like, I just completely didn't accept the compliment.
Right. Right. No, I wasn't saying that directly to you. Maybe you didn't in your head. I don't know.
No, I thought that.
Did you? Yeah. Like, why do we do that? Somebody gives us a compliment.
Say thank you.
That's all you got to do. Right? That's all you got to do. But we fail to do that so much.
Yeah, I do that a lot with like when you have these older people and they want to give our kids like, they help out. Here's a $10 bill or here's whatever. Here's some candy. I just take it, because sometimes them giving it to you is like, don't be ashamed because you don't feel right taking it. Like if they're offering it to you, take it. You know, you taking it's going to be more of a blessing to them, and you get blessed by having that.
Yeah, this is why one of the things in therapy, right, I have a hard time with. Sometimes people want to give me gifts, and we have ethics where we can't receive like really expensive stuff and all. But anybody that tells me this ethical battle that I might have with a therapist out there, not receiving a gift in circumstances is like a denial of someone's expression of appreciation and gratitude, and you don't want to just deny that automatically. I say thank you.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between here I'm coming to therapy so my wife gets off my back. Here, let me buy you tickets to that Pittsburgh Steelers game so you can sign it off, versus saying, hey, I spent 6 months with you and you've helped my marriage. Let me thank you by buying you tickets to a Steelers game. There's a difference in the gifts and the reasoning behind it, because like I said, they want to show your appreciation and how awesome you are in their life.
Of course, that would be an expensive one. I would have a hard time saying no. But
of course, I don't know why you would go to a Steelers game. But
I know, right? All right, last one in managing to crush shame. Maybe that should have been the title. How do we crush shame? Although we don't want to get rid of shame totally. Never mind, strike that. Last one, get logical. Right? Get logical on bad events and things that we have go on in our lives. I know it sounds kind of trite and weird, but you hear people talk about, this bad event happened. What can I learn from this? Let's just sidestep shame. What do I need to gain from this experience? Ask yourself some questions like that in a logical way so that you can move out of the immoral, improper, done something wrong, I am a bad kind of thought person crap and get into a positive growth place and say, what do I need to do? How do I grow? Okay, I've been humbled. What do I need to do next to be a better person, to be a better loving husband, a caring wife, or, nurturing parent? Yeah, those are things that we want to gain, and shame can point some stuff out, and then we pivot from that, sidestep it, and get logical with it. Ask some of those good questions.
And I think that's key, because shame is such an emotion-based reaction or emotion-based behavior that the way you deal with emotions is logic. like I said, you've said this before. Your emotions, what triggers your emotions? Okay, now logically, how do I handle that? My kid's karate teacher said, you can't control how you feel, but you can control how you react. Like you said, might not control the shame, but how do you learn from it? How do you grow from that? And once you shift from the emotions to the logical, you can actually figure out how to adapt, how to
manage the emotion.
Right. So
yeah, it's funny to me. People say that you can't control how you feel. It's a paradox right there, isn't it? Isn't it a little intricate side play? We just said get logical and use your thoughts about it so that it influences the way that you feel. Thus, you're managing your feeling. You can't control the way you feel, but you can manage this stuff. Listen, I'm going to end by getting onto the idea here that we all feel very deep experiences with shame attacks, shame moments, shame behavior. It's chronic, it's regular, and I want you to understand that you can manage those things. So as we're dealing with these feelings and emotions, shame is going to be a part of many of them. You're empowered, you're enabled, you're in charge of you. So be good to yourself, take care of yourself, set good boundaries with other people, learn what you need to learn, understand, use shame to be well, but crush shame when it's hurting you. Mr. Craig Graves is going to be back next week. Not sure what we're going to be talking about, but I am looking forward to that. Y'all have a good week. And I'm sure maybe I'll have more energy next week. How about that?
I hope so.
Take care.